Oh,
When I
really?
looked at it, I thought it was like that Pittman shorthand.
There's a reason I never write anything for it.
Who said that would be, is that us?
Yeah.
We were gonna get rid of. Thanks for that. Serious face. Yes. Yeah, got a little bit of that kickback. It's gonna be very nice.
Yeah. If we mute that though, so that they'll still record it, turn the audio down,
Yeah,
then we won't hear the audio on it, but it'll be recorded.
but it'll be recording. Okay, perfect. Can we do that one?
That done, Chris?
Yeah. Body's all turned down on us.
Shall we start? And it's being recorded now.
Yeah. That's just two here.
Hey, thanks, guys. I know it's not your fault.
Okay, welcome to the special Kingston Police Services Board meeting, November 25th, 2024 here at police headquarters for the budget. I'd just like to say that we're starting late today. This budget meeting will be recorded on different audio system. Will be released online later today due to technical difficulties. And may I ask if there's a disclosure of a conflict of interest? None. Very good. Should I have an approval of the agenda? And Gail, all in favor? Thank you. And then there's a recommendation report that we'd like to hear, and very good. You want to start that, Scarlett?
Yeah, okay. Nope. So we're going to go into our presentation. My apologies for the delay here. As we click through here, Scarlett and I are going to go back in and out, and we'll jump in and out. But I just first of all want to thank everybody for all their efforts in putting this together. Our senior management team, Scarlett and TJ, who put the presentation together, and of course, all of us are working collaboratively to bring a very a budget that's been very deeply considered by everyone. And it's, the purpose of it obviously being here to address our operational needs, our priorities, maintaining public safety, meeting legislative requirements, and of course, like everywhere, considering inflationary pressures and new investments in technology, training and infrastructure. And, the whole purpose of our budget presentation today and the ask to the board is that we can continue to deliver effective and efficient policing to the community. So, thank you. So, obviously, we're just going to put up our mission and our vision. And, this is something that we work collaboratively with as well, obviously for the future and really to be future ready. And that's what our budget is really here, is we're preparing to be future ready. And of course, we're going to go into a lot more detail in there. And, obviously part of it being the vision of, encouraging public confidence, professionalism, accountability, and increased public safety. So that's our considerations as we move forward. Next slide, please. So we're going to be recommending that the board, accept a total net budget of $54,053,627. And our capital budget is going to be 2.9, just over 2.9 in capital requests. And at the end of the day, I think it's real important here as well with our budget to understand we really have two sides of our budget this year. And any year that you have a collective agreement, which is settled, you have different pressures. It's not just like we're going into the exact same budget year as we were last year or the year before. Had we settled the collective agreement last year, we would have been having this conversation last year. So in that regard, if we're to take our 2024 budget, keep everything the exact same and move it to 2025, we're starting at 9.90%. So we're at 9.9 before we even do anything in relation to operating expenses. And we're simply restating the 24 to 25 would be 9. And that is a direct result of obviously our collective agreement, which include adjustments to wages, benefits, other compensation provisions as were negotiated. And they represent a large portion of our overall budget, approximately 3/4 of the increase. But once again, this funding is what's there to ensure that we can meet our contractual obligations. And for people who don't know, obviously, contract negotiations involve the board and the association, and that's how the negotiations are completed. The collective agreement did expire in 2022. And, they're very complex and they take time, and it did get resolved and ratified. And as a result, we're going to see also some expenses that relate to 23 and 24 and retro pay and things like that. So if you look and compartmentalize it, 9.9 is 24 to 25, restating our budget, if we just maintain status quo and do nothing. In addition to this 9.9, we're going to be requesting the board consider a 3.84% increase, which is going to offset long-term absences, assist with supporting the implementation of the board's strategic plan. And of course, some of those things, there's many in that strategic plan. But, one of our biggest thing is our presence downtown and our response to homelessness and encampments and mental health and things like that. So that's all part and parcel of this requested increase. Also, to meet legislative requirements, of course, we have the new Community Safety and Policing Act that came into effect in April 1st, 2024. That added new pressures as well. So that's all incorporated. So 9.90 collective bargaining, $24 to $25. 3.84 is what we're going to be asking, and we'll go into depth why we're asking for 3.84. Next slide, please. So, of course, I speak to myself. In Kingston, it's a very diverse community. We have the luxury of having many things in our community, which include our educational institutions, which includes our custodial institutions. Obviously CFB Kingston, to name a few. Our academic partners bring in about 35,000 full-time students each year, which we add to the population of 142,119, because they're not captured. Students are transient and are not captured as residents. On the other side, unless they live here, of course, don't get me wrong, but if they're just here for school. We also have the, our CFB Kingston, which is a great partner to all of us, just over 3,400 members there, plus 286 reserve members and just over 800 civilian members. And then another thing that we wanted to discuss here is our aging population, 2,200 seniors over the age of 85. And about 18% of our population is around the age of 65 or just over the age of 65. And it's important that we recognize that as that's a big thing in our community. And also for us, it has some lasting effects with regards to obviously a very vulnerable group of people when it comes to fraud, and scams and things like that. They're one of the main targets for most criminals on that end. And then also we have, you encounter things such as people with Alzheimer's or dementia. And, that we often have people who may go missing. So just a little snapshot of our community. Next slide, please. Some of the things that we can certainly, in relation to our strategic plan, we have, at the board's request, obviously, and when we started last year, our community fun fair, we did that again. We have the number of events we've attended with our core team, and the schools that we're servicing. Traffic safety, obviously, one of our main priorities as well, with 14 level 4 investigations, 10 fatalities, but $17,000 in fine, and a really important number, 64 level 1 commercial motor vehicle inspections, which is very interesting because obviously if we can get to preventative maintenance, sometimes creates, certainly eliminates the accidents that follow. And our emergency response unit was deployed 57 times thus far, and that will be more till the end of the year, and just the number of checks that we have there. So next slide, please. Just continuing on with our snapshots here. Obviously, our court services section, that's very busy. And what topic of big discussion, breach of probations, breach of recognizance, that revolving door of people getting released, being charged, getting released. I'll go into some of those costs after, but we see an uptick in that. Of course, our drug unit, street crime unit, actively out there, taking drugs off the street. And, our criminal investigators, 1,500 cases assigned to our criminal investigations. And of course, we're trying to fulfill the mandate of the strategic plan and our recruiting from diverse communities, increasing our platform, increasing our footprint in other communities, trying to get people to come to Kingston. We did hire 20 candidates in the sworn and civilian positions. We had 26 internal transfers, and then we held 3 new recruit competitions. So we're going to keep doing that stuff to try and meet the needs of our community, and of course the mandate by the board for strategic plan. Next slide, please. A lot of the pressures that we may get on service delivery, we have good successes, but there are things that certainly impact. Bill C-48, which is new bail reform, which I kind of alluded to a few minutes earlier, the costs that are associated with it, the number that's associated with it, and the new processes that we are required for disclosure are really significant. And we're not the only police service; it's every police service in Ontario that's suffering. So, just the costs of that and the constant kind of revolving door situation. The new Police Act that came into effect in April, there's several legislative requirements that were required. They're going to obviously impact, and I know certainly from a board level, you've already seen the changes that are there, and it is a lot more demanding on everybody, and it's going to be new training and mandatory community safety and well-being planning and things like that. 911 calls, mental health, obviously huge pressure for us on there. There's no real sometimes response is we may be stuck at the hospital for hours, and the person may be seen for 5 minutes and then released, and then an hour later we're right back where we started again. So obviously continuing to advocate for pathways to rehabilitation, that's something that our strategic plan does. That's what we'll continue to do in that. But we're seeing a constant increase in those calls, and I think it's very evident the community would agree that they've seen things change. Probably if you asked anyone, they'll certainly, when I speak to people, they've noticed a change. And of course, resourcing, training, and digital evidence. Every crime now has a digital footprint, and we're required to extract that data. We have to do it in a timely fashion. And I know the board had the privilege, and it was recorded as well, having John Terrio, our e-crimes investigator, do a presentation just to see where those pressures are. So we're going to be addressing that in this budget as well. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. So as you can see here, here's a snapshot of what a typical breach of a court order. This is really what's into it. It's not just a matter that we go and pick someone up and then drive them in and drop them off. There's costs associated to it, with officers making the arrests. We have a sergeant who has to book. We have prisoner care. We have cell monitors, then charging and processing, and then of course transporting to bail and monitoring at the courthouse and things like that. So there's a lot of things that go into it. Plus, if they're here for the day, we have to feed them. And in a snapshot, you look at 619 times we've done that this year for approximately $676,000, and that's just one example. We could also even look to the Canadian Forces downloading sexual assaults onto municipal police departments, which has commenced. We've been working collaboratively on that. There is a working group in the province of Ontario, because obviously it's got a major impact for police services that have army bases. If you don't really have an army base, chances are it may not affect you that much. But for us, continuing with that working group, because you could have situations where you have a victim in Victoria, a witness in Newfoundland, and an accused in Nunavut. And then if it's downloaded on the police, we have to deal with all that. So we continue to monitor all of those things. It's increased responsibilities for us, and we're required to do it. So we're certainly working provincially on that. You hear it in the news all the time in regards to bail and the difficulties around some of the release and things like that. It's not in our control, but what we have to do is we have to be there to be able to respond. So prisoner transportation is just another example as well. And as things get downloaded, I know there are we get some provincial coverage and grants to cover off court security and things like that, but they don't cover 100% of it. It's a percentage. So the rest is to the taxpayer. And next slide, please. Just a snapshot of our 911 calls for service. We're a primary PSAP, which means we are the first call when 911 comes in, and then it says police, ambulance, fire. We don't receive any money for that to be the first call and then dispatch those calls elsewhere. But we did see an increase in 23, and then we're seeing a slight decrease in 24. And so we'll just continue monitoring that. But at the end of the day, that's the calls that come in. Some are for us, some are for other agencies, but we're answering those primary calls. We're going to estimate around 55,000 calls, assuming the trends stay similar for the rest of till the end of the year. So, next slide, please. Mental health calls, as we've already discussed, we're seeing an increase in those everywhere, and unfortunately, the resources are just not there for people, and that generally then tends to lead to multiple arrests. Multiple arrests leads to multiple release. And so if you saw, we're talking about bail and bail reform and the cost to continually bring a person in. A lot of this is mental health related, which leads to the criminal offense. And I think if you look at Market Square, we know we dealt behind City Hall with, there's 3 people that caused the majority of the problems. We had to continually repeat them. They have mental health issues, but the offenses they were committing were, bad. So we had to go that route. And then you notice a dramatic difference when they're not there. And they're not getting the help they need. So when they are released, we know we'll be right back to having to deal with that. So, and it's unfortunate, but we'll continue advocating as our strategic plan outlines for pathways to rehabilitation. And I know that we're seeing globally across Canada where they're coming up with new, different ideas that were years ago, and they're bringing them back, like British Columbia opening up non-voluntary beds, and they'll be open for a longer period of time. So we'll see how that all goes, and we'll continue to advocate for that as we move forward. Crime Severity Index, you can see Kingston there in about the middle. This is really telling us it's a measure of police reported crime. So it's measuring the relative seriousness of the individual offenses, and then it tracks changes. So there's big things that really make a difference. In 2023, you have no homicide. In 2024, you have 4 homicides. That's obviously going to really make a difference in those numbers. So the Crime Severity Index, what it's really saying is, the crime in Kingston is still serious. It improved a little bit because in 2023 it was 66. In 2019 it was 82. So we were seeing it come down, but month or year to year you could see major offenses like we talk about robberies and homicides and assaults, things like that can really drive the numbers. So number of police officers per 100,000. Next slide, please. So we're just putting this up here to give you a little snapshot of what other places are. Obviously, the delivery of policing in every community is up to the community and the police service board, and everybody does it a little bit differently. But in our numbers here, you can see we're below the Canadian average, we're below the Ontario average, and we've just put some others. So you can see they have their population, the number of police officers, and the number of officers per 100,000. So it's data that's collected from Stats Can. And, it used to be in the policing survey they did every year. Now they do it every 2 years. So we'll be able to monitor again. I think it's next year is the next one, I believe. Don't quote me on. So it's just for information purposes. Slide, please. There we go. Staffing levels. This is alluding to our sworn numbers. So we've got the numbers up. Obviously, our officers on long-term absences include long-term disability, WSIB. It's been discussed a number of times throughout the province. The presumptive legislation around post-traumatic stress, PTSD, but and there's other occupational stress injuries there. And so when we have that on the number of officers that are certainly away on long-term absences, then we have accommodated officers where we have a duty to accommodate officers who maybe have a medical restriction, and that leaves them non-deployable for frontline duties. And then we locate a position in the organization if there is one, and work them through an accommodated work process with the goal to try and work them back into full-time frontline duties or duties for which they can, obviously providing meaningful work and meaningful response to the community. So you look at those numbers, and obviously we have other forms of leave, which could include suspension. We have 31 vacancies that we're certainly working with. hence why we're coming forward asking for that 3.8% increase. And we'll get into that a little bit further, but we're looking with that to hire 13 new sworn in 2025. And when I say new sworn, they're new people to our organization, but they're replacing people who aren't here and filling the voids that are left by those people who are not here. And at the end of the day, with those bodies, what we're looking to do is add 6 to our frontline patrol officers, 3 in our criminal investigations branch, 1 in our e-crime section, and 3 officers who would be assigned at City Hall to work out of a community policing office at City Hall and kind of combat social issues in our entire community. They'll be based downtown, but they may be obviously working with the entire community. So at the end of the day, they would be backfilling for long-term absences. It's going to provide additional capacity for us and, align with our organizational needs, which are there, and reduce the strain, because the other part about absences is that people have to step up and fill in those absences. And we're seeing, people are getting fatigued because they're having to, and we saw it not long ago with paid duties, trying to fill paid duties. Even at construction sites, it's getting difficult because we just don't have the capacity. And the people are getting burned out from having to either backfill on a patrol shift or go to paid duties. So, and we do have some secondments, which we work with. Those are officers who are not working in the Kingston Police. They're assigned to other areas, but their salaries are recovered to the city of Kingston. And then we plan things out and overhire for them. And so we have a body here, but they're being paid for provincially. We have 2 in our repeat offender parole enforcement team, which is ROPE, 1 in the pen squad, which does a lot of the investigations in the pen, which eliminates our officers from having to go when there's an assault in the pen. The pen squad will take that. And we're one of the only communities that has that. And we're fortunate because it does alleviate a lot of calls from our frontline patrol. Provincial Weapons Enforcement Unit and our Guns and Gangs Unit, we have 1 in each of those, and then we have 2 combating human trafficking. So that's kind of where our bodies are. This is really important here because what we're really trying to do with that's 2025 budget is offset that total non-deployable number of 31. Ideally, it'd be great in 1 year to be able to backfill all. We know that's not realistic, and we know this year also presented some other opportunities and challenges, namely being that it's a collective agreement settlement year. So, we understand that. So we are hoping to obviously add 13 bodies this year and 12 bodies next year to split that out. And to ensure that we're trying to be respectful we know the burden that it will bear. However, to be respectful and understand that we're still working on filling those vacancies. So I'm going to turn it over to Scarlett to go through some little deeper dive into some of the numbers.
Everyone's welcome today, and thank you for being here. So on this slide, the 2025 recommended operating budget is summarized. The 2025 operating budget proposal reflects a total of 54.1 million as compared to a budget of 47.5 in 2024, which represents a total increase of 6.5 million or 13.74%. And again, just to highlight it, what the chief said at the beginning during the recommendation, that this reflects really a 9.9% increase to restate the base budget to $2025. Really, most of it is directly attributed to the newly settled collective agreement. And then in addition, the request includes 3.84% to offset long-term absences, support implementation of the Kingston Police Services strategic plan, including enhanced police presence in the downtown core, and to meet legislative requirements, namely the Community Safety and Policing Act that came into effect April 1, 2024. And then on the right side, you're just going to see that there's a chart that kind of shows the 2025 net budget percentage by division. And I know that's a little bit hard to see, so we tried to add those little squares to kind of highlight the percentage. And it's no surprise that if you looked at that, you'd see that 41.1%, for example, is the patrol and comms division, our frontline team. Next slide, please. So this slide kind of summarizes the 2024 operating state at $2025. So to maintain existing service levels in 2025, there are certain costs that are effectively beyond our control, so to speak, such as inflationary pressures, contractual obligations, and mandated requirements. The 2025 proposed operating budget includes a funding increase of 4.72 million or 9.90%. This really represents the restatement of the 2024 operating budget to 2025 dollars. And just to highlight again, the 2025 budget increase incorporates several factors, including salary and benefit increases as per negotiated agreement. The contract, which closed at the end of 2022, were finalized recently and included retroactive compensation adjustment wage rate really for 2023 and 2024 periods. So there is a bit of a catch-up component that's built into the 2025 budget, which is slightly higher than what we had originally anticipated. Key factors driving the increase include base wage rate increases, higher specialty and premium pays, and enhanced payroll benefits. These increases really ensure compliance with the newly negotiated agreements and are consistent with trends observed across other police services and specifically comparable services. Non-discretionary items such as salary and benefits are derived from the collective agreements and represent approximately 86.2% of the total expenditure budget for the Kingston. Again, this increase really reflects what is needed to maintain core services and ensure the continuation of the services approved in the 2024 budget. Next slide, please. And so this slide summarizes the new budget increase, which represents approximately 1.82 million or 3.84%. So this again represents strategic plan initiatives. One of them, several of many, but just as one example relating to the downtown police presence, legislative requirements, and critical long-term absent backfill requirements. So offsetting the increases are additional revenues, including an increase of background check revenues and additional funds to offset the costs of policing the downtown core, including a contribution from the city of Kingston of $209,000. And that's built into the facilities budget on the city side. Next slide, please. This slide kind of summarizes the cumulative impact of both of these things together. And so you're going to see the 2025 proposed operating budget is 54.1 million or 13.74%. So again, that's the 9.9% base budget restated to 2025 dollars plus 3.84%, which encompasses the strategic planning initiatives, legislative requirements, and critical long-term absence. And I will now pass you back to the chief, who will discuss how this falls within our strategic plan and the benefits to the community.
And I know the board's well versed in our strategic plan, and our staff are becoming more and more versed in it. But obviously, we're reducing the weighted crime by 10% in the downtown, having our people in Kingston, including marginalized or disadvantaged, feel safer and more satisfied, improve member job satisfaction, engagement, improve weighted clearance rate of 45%. These are our main targets, and then under those we each have action plans, and we know this is 23 to 26, and we know we're chipping away and we still have a ways to go. We're working at meeting some of those standards, and it's a pretty lofty it's lofty goals, but that's good because it's something for us to work towards and achieve. And I know we have we're doing great in some areas, and there's room for improvement in others, and we'll continue doing that with the guidance of the strategic plan to move us forward. Next slide, please. Okay, and we can go through a little bit of these with you, and I understand. I know you've read them, and the public have seen them in our strategic plan updates as well that we do a couple times a year, so we can notify the board and the community what we're doing. We're still working on our evidence-based policing strategies. Sometimes the courses get delayed, and then as a result, we're not able to attend. We've been working very diligently with the city, the DBIA on the downtown issues. Obviously, and we've added extra resources to that. I know in our partnership, we had a beat officer assigned, and then we've added 2 other resources to work in that specific area, and including encampments. but that's all over the city, but oftentimes their focus has been downtown. And we're still continuing to work towards our bail dashboard system. And we're, once again, it's technology that we're battling here and moving forward. And we're each time we are able to do an improvement in our technology, we're getting closer to having this come to fruition in our bail dashboard. And obviously, the big thing for us moving forward is that opportunity to have a community storefront downtown, focusing at City Hall, and then tackling social issues that the community is facing. So it's not a matter of everything's going to be at all the resources will be downtown. They will tackle resources in the community, but we have found that there's a significant increase in calls for service in that downtown core, and that's why it's been identified by the board for the strategic plan. Next slide, please. We've been working at a new platform for recruiting. We do have that online. We're working towards a corporate communications position to help our media to get the word out, and obviously hosting different forms of community events that we're trying to get engaged with our community. And of course, we're increasing our training. Our active bystandership and law enforcement training has been rolled out to our frontline officers and our sworn officers in the building. And that's we've got one more training day in the next couple of weeks. I believe 2 more training days in the next couple of weeks to have everyone trained there. So we're going to continue doing that. And of course, our core team and our officers and trying to get out to those communities and try and have our service representative of those communities. And we'll continue working that. Next slide, please. Obviously, for our people, as we've discussed, we're obviously seeing a lot of people working a lot of hours. And as a result, we've expanded our safeguard program, which bringing in more officers to access, to have access to mental health services. And just being able to, know the baseline and know what to look for. We have many positions in our organization with the requirement. Because they're the work that they do, like our people in the internet child exploitation unit. Obviously, that our high risk teams, ensuring that they're okay and making sure they know they have an opportunity to speak about anything. Obviously, our wellness initiatives. We've expanded our occupational therapy and wellness in our organization. We have an outside contractor who comes in to work with our staff, and they have an office here that they can use, and it's very easy. Civilian staff to sign up and go in and attend a meeting, and whether it needs 15 minutes or a half hour or continued week to week, we have that service available. Employee recognition, and we did bring back our employee awards ceremony at City Hall. It was very well attended, and that's something we'll continue to do forward. And it was in our strategic plan to recognize in a timely fashion employees and their successes, and to continue moving that forward. So we want to recognize them, and we know we have some further work to do there, but that's going to be part of our whole strategy moving forward. Improving our weighted crime rate, next slide please, to 45%. Obviously training and education and getting out there and, once again, it's ensuring we have the resource to attend to the call. And when we have the resource to attend to the call, that they're trained, they know what to do, and that they can, if it is solvable, that we do solve it. And, we have to be compliant with our uniform crime reporting requirements that are mandated in the statistics that we have to give to Stats Canada. And, obviously, working in this regard too is our working in our disclosure. And the disclosure process we have in the new Bail Reform Act that we're working through, that's all part and parcel of this too. Providing a good quality Crown brief to our Crown attorneys so they can go to court with a great case and, obviously improve our clearance rates. So we'll continue doing that. We're looking at realigning staff and looking at the zones in our community. Is it worth, realigning different zones and providing some more further oversight in our communications section, so the officers are there able to provide some insight when people are calling in. Next slide, please. Transferring out of non-criminal low-risk cases. Obviously Health IM, which is a software program we use for our apprehensions under the Mental Health Act. It's something that allows us the opportunity to share directly with the hospital, provide advice to the officer who's entering the data, and then further, obviously, we're trying to reduce our wait times at the hospital. Anytime we can do that, that's a good success. It's an ongoing process utilizing places such as the Community Safety and Wellbeing Committee, using Risk Watch, partners in our agency or in our community that we can pass things off. We have an excellent relationship with bylaw. If it's a bylaw offense, they can be dispatched. So those type of cases, we're looking at adding special constables to each patrol shift, as we discussed before, looking at a pilot project with KGH, special constable at the hospital, which we're seeing in other communities that's being very successful. So we're freeing officers up to get back out on the road and take some calls. So we'll continue moving that forward. And then I'm going to turn it back over to Scarlett for some revenues.
2025 budgeted revenues coming in at 5.7 million and increasing by a total of $314,000 or 5.88% over the 2024 budget of 5.3. So contributors to the increase include additional revenues generated from police background and record checks, which are anticipated to increase by approximately 50K. This is really reflective of a pilot project with a third-party criminal record check provider to process additional background checks. And then provincial funding is projected to increase by around $180,000. This is primarily due to the increased funding from the Court Security and Prisoner Transportation Grant, which is really increased by about $182,000. And then the expenditure recoveries, which are increasing by $90,000 or 5.10%. So one of the things that we have additional revenues in here from the city contribution towards the downtown officer support. But one thing that does, there is a reduction of 60K that was that we're taking out of our budget related to administrative monetary penalties. And this is really, it's a good thing, but sad thing for the budget. But this really reflects revenues actually realized. So, and again, maybe the chief will want to jump in on this, but we didn't really any.
Yeah, so our efforts to decrease our footprint at Queens or at our post-secondary things like St. Patrick's Day and homecoming, fake homecoming. This is one of the results that, if we have PLT out saying, hey, don't do these things, and then they don't do them, there's no enforcement. And so it's a good thing. And revenue, it's just that really is where we're at. We had another great event, as you saw. So that's where we're at in that. And that's a good news story. And but a bad because 60K is coming up.
Next slide, please. So this just moving to the expenditures, total expenditures proposed in a 2025 draft budget are 59.7 million, which they are increasing by 6.8 or 12.95% of the 2024 approved budget. So the wage and benefit costs estimated at 51.5 are increasing by 14% or 6.3 million over the 2024 budget. And again, mentioned a couple of times, this is really directly attributed to the newly settled collective agreements. Base salary rates and other specialty compensation have been incorporated into this budget, and estimates are in accordance with negotiated agreements. The contracts, which expired at the end of 2022, were finalized recently and include retroactive compensation adjustments for 2023 and 2024. Again, that was mentioned earlier. And as well, there are several enhanced payroll benefits. These increases really ensure compliance with the newly negotiated agreements. And again, I will just say that these trends are observed across other police services and are really consistent with other comparable services. Some of the other things that are kind of specifics that came out of these contracts are not only increases to base wage rates, but also additional frontline premiums, increased rates for specialized roles. And again, that's consistent with other agencies across Ontario and Canada. Regular salary contract increases, including increases based on years of service and rank progressions. Part-time, again, that's increasing and reflects really adjustments to hourly wage rates to align with the new agreements. Also, additional costs associated with, there's an additional statutory holiday. And so an increased utilization of part-time to backfill for full-time employees on leave, including negotiated vacation entitlement increases and other scheduled time off. And then, again, just some highlights on the benefits side, really reflective of increases of statutory deductions and employer paid benefits, such as CPP, EI, OMARS, health and dental premiums, LTD, which is increasing from 50% employer paid coverage to 100%. Again, we were one of the last agencies in Ontario that wasn't paying all of the others. And then overtime increasing by 119,000. And again, that's really due to the increases in the base wage rates, and especially in premium pays. There are additional costs associated with annualization of positions that were added in 2024, such as senior farm analyst and the board administrators who full-time. And I'll just say that the board administrator moving to full-time is really, again, in a direct response to the new Community and Safety and Policing Act, which adds an increased workload. We had additional board members coming on and all kinds of new oversight and things. So again, that's what kind of drove that. And then just to highlight the cost and salary and benefits for the 14 sworn and 5 civilian members away on long-term absences currently impacts this budget by about 2.8 million. And I just want to say that that's just on the WSIB and like LTD kind of side. And that's just an increase from 2024, which was 2.4 million. So just to kind of highlight how much it's increasing, even though I'm trying to get it to come down. If you could just move to the next slide, please. So this table kind of provides a comparator overview of wage settlement percentages for select Ontario police services over the specified contract durations. And these were just the ones that I could get. These are kind of, again, which I noted earlier, consistent with trends. Kingston is consistent with other trends observed across other agencies, and specifically some of the comparable services. So if you looked at Yale, Barrie, and then even if you looked at OPP, you could see that a lot of other services are landing. Next slide, please. So I'll just talk briefly again about the increase in supplies and material. The supplies and materials are 3.1 million, increasing by $273,000 over the 2024 budget. Inflationary increases are impacting several expenses in this category. Efforts really have been made to manage the level of discretionary expenses to offset some of these pressures. Fuel budgeted at 539K in 2024 or 2025 is an increase of 43,000 or 8.61% compared to the previous year. So this projection is really based on an estimated average fuel price of $1.60, which is consistent with what the city budget. And then we are through the same contract with the city for all fuel, which includes also the continuation of the provincial fuel tax reduction. And the budget assumes no increases to the volume of liters required, which we know that that's not necessarily, sometimes maybe there might be adjustments that are really needed. And insurance. So moving to this one, insurance is $99,000 higher, and this is really primarily due to higher than anticipated premiums. So Kingston Police are covered under the City of Kingston's combined insurance plan. So this increase, and this is really consistent, insurance just keeps going up and up and up for municipalities. Like it's getting harder and harder to have coverage. The increase really reflects not only rising insurance costs, but also there are some additional items requiring coverage due to advancements in technology. And again, for example, new equipment such as drones, where these have to be added under insurance and insured. And then education and training is increasing by $60,000, and this is really to comply with the mandated requirements of the Ontario Regulation 8724 under the CSPA Act that was mentioned earlier. And this regulation really specifies mandatory training for police officers, including use of force and de-escalation techniques and role-specific training. Next slide, please. And then this one just talks about our contracted services, which are estimated at 4.8 million, and increasing by 236K or 5.15% from 2024 levels. So these costs really the projected increase in contracted services is largely attributed to auto transcription services. And again, after I'm done this, I might hand that back over to Chief just to add how critical it is to have these services. So this is related to auto transcription services and ongoing costs associated with maintaining and servicing TASER devices. And I can tell you that a lot of efforts have been put in from the IT side to try to reduce some of the IT contracted services to try to offset some of these. And there is a reduction factored into this budget that's reducing the Microsoft 365 licenses by $110,000. The other thing that's captured under the contracted services is the building maintenance services. So I know that everyone's aware of it in 2024, just as a recap. We moved to contracting out all our building services to the city of Kingston. The budget for these services is increasing by $32,000, and this really just reflects the annual 3% contractual increase, and there's a small little part that's additional so that they can do the maintenance for the generator. And then the 2025 budget also includes $45,000 of additional funding for contracted benefits. And again, this is reflective of the newly negotiated collective agreements. And this is really the increased enhanced benefits provided to staff related to the healthcare spending account, which is contracted in. Next slide, please. So that we regularly monitor other police service budget rate increases through member associations. Based on current information in a survey of other police service agencies, the average 2025 budget increase is around 10.47%. As you can see, Kingston Police is on the just around the same and lower than some actually. So we can just leave that aside for a second. But next slide, please. So this one kind of talks about our every year. So the operating forecasts reflect 8.4% for 2026, 4.13 for 2027, and 3.45 for 2028. So again, the forecasted every years of the budget include provisions for additional settlement amounts. So we tried to spread out some of the increases over, well, the board spread out some of the increases over multiple years, which is very helpful to our budget. So the operating budget forecast for the years 2026 to 2028 assumes an annual inflation rate of around 2 to 3%. No changes to provincial grants, which we're hoping again that we can start lobbying and getting funding from the province to help lower this. No other new program initiatives. And then, as the chief mentioned earlier, in 2026, we're hoping to again ask for another 12 positions to essentially backfill for the long-term absences. And again, if you look at the projected increase averaged over 4 years, it's around the 7% mark.
I think it's important too, when you, speaking with other chiefs where there's been that continued pressure to remain with a low budget or as you know, as lean as you can get. And then eventually it just, you can't do it anymore. And then there's a big year and then it's followed by progressive, and the big year really represents the hiring of bonds. If you looked at the news last year, you saw the police services that had it. Last year, it's really about backfilling for vacancies generally created by long-term absences. So we're seeing it somewhat, some did it last year. There's other chiefs that are going to have to do it next year. And we're here this year asking.
So this one talks about our 2025 capital budget ask. So a capital budget in the amount of 2.8 million. And I apologize because it said on the very first slide that it was 2.9 and that was incorrect.
Yeah, it's just,
So that's a typo. So I just wanted to point that out. We did actually bring that down a little bit last minute. So the budget request for Kingston Police seeks funding really to address essential operational needs and new requirements under the Community Safety and Policing Act. So the Community Safety and Policing Act really introduced specific equipment and uniform requirements for police services in Ontario. And this was really around enhancing public safety and ensuring effective law enforcement. So provisions included within this capital budget request have been spread over the next couple of years. Regulations mandate that officers perform community patrol functions have ready access to specific equipment, including battering ram, Halligan tools. Moving on to our fleet replacement. So the capital request for replacement vehicles is increasing in 2025. And really, this is another one that's ahead of our control and is associated with the increased cost of vehicles. There is a little bit that's built into this to try to transition to fuel efficient and hybrid models as part of sustainability initiatives. And again, beyond the base cost of vehicles, we still have the budget accounts for outfitting of the vehicles with essential requirements, including, for example, emergency lights, sirens, communication systems, mobile data terminals, license plate readers, secure storage for firearms, and partitioning and safety barriers. So I really wanted to highlight that it's not just a base cost for the vehicle, and with technology advancing, it's really pushing up even more costs for vehicles. And then additionally, the capital cost includes funding for equipment and protective gear such as body armor, firearms, communications technology, and tactical tools. The IT budget ask of 1.1 million. This includes regular scheduled replacement of existing hardware, such as computers, laptops, printers, network equipment, as well as the physical security for the server, room and backup and disaster recovery systems. And then furthermore, the budget includes 75K within the capital building envelope request. This is really a request that's for critical renovations that are required in the victim services space. These renovations are really required to improve functionality, accessibility, and privacy for employees and victims seeking support. So they do not have enough space in their current setup, and it's really critical that that space is redone. Next slide, please. So this concludes the presentation. This slide kind of features some photos that were captured, showcasing the hard work, dedication, and community engagement of the Kingston Police team. And then that's all. Thank you all for listening today and for taking the time to review our 25 proposal budget. We appreciate your attention. We'll be happy to answer any questions we have. Thank you.
I have 2 questions. Is there any future prospects of getting any kind of income from the federal government for supplying policing to the military bases?
That's certainly not on the table, but that's something that, makes sense. We'd love to see that. And that's directly in the working group is working on that with regards like for the Canadian Armed Forces downloading of sexual assault investigations, but there's nothing been proposed as of yet. I know Deputy Chief Funnell sits on that working group, and we've not yet seen any money in relation to that.
Okay. And then as far as the budget goes, the replacement of the fleet at 1.1 million. Remember on there for sale of the vehicles that they're replacing, where would that be?
So the way that works is that it's actually built into the reserve fund models on the city side. So we have a contribution that's built into the operating budget that's a transfer to the police capital reserve fund. Any monies that are that we make from any of the vehicles sold, that money is flowed to the city and put back into that reserve fund, and then that reserve fund funds any of our capital needs.
Anybody else? Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I do apologize. I have to run in a couple of minutes. I have one question and just a couple of comments, if that's okay. My question is on the mental health calls. Talked about a 31% increase in number of calls. It's been an attempt to try to quantify the cost of that. So what does that cost us? And what is a 31% increase in mental health calls budget-wise?
So I think the main thing is that we can have an apprehension that is relatively swift. They make apprehension. They can go to the hospital and sometimes be in and out in 20, 25 minutes. It's rare. Our average is just over an hour. So 2 officers there for that hour plus the time leading up to it. But sometimes we're there for 8 hours. And sometimes there's 6 officers there for 8 hours each. And, depending on what's happening at the hospital, it's 100% once again out of our control. The medical side does have a process. It's not in the Mental Health Act, but in their processes, a person has to be evaluated in the ER first. So every person who's apprehended has to go to the emergency room. And if the emergency room has 300 people and we get there 301, we get treated 301st. There are some doctors who will prioritize police, but we don't have it. It's merely that's a luxury that often is created. And we really appreciate when that does happen. So the costs certainly, and I know Scarlett will be able to dig a little deeper into numbers, but the costs certainly can vary from everyone. So it's pretty tough to say this, and this. But what we do know is how much time we are spending. Health IM tracks that. We can attribute that to a dollar value on what it is. And you're seeing in other communities where the municipalities have taken it upon themselves, where like Toronto, and there's just another municipality that's trying it, where they're actually hiring staff who are responding to these calls. Now, there's a need when there's when there's violence, but the police need to be there because we have the tools to handle that. But the majority of the calls do not need police. And in fact, it's a stigma on the person. It's a medical issue that the police are intervening on for the purpose of conveyance to the hospital, for the purpose of conveyance to the emergency room, and then for the purpose of handoff. And we can't leave under the Mental Health Act until the hospital takes custody of that person. And there's a lot of things we've been lobbying the government as chiefs of police to make changes to that Mental Health Act that haven't been done in years and years. So there's a room for movement there. But I don't know if you have any other comment there.
Yeah, I will just add a couple comments because I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I'm happy to, after this meeting, I will provide an email and I will bring this also back to the board and I will make sure that this is on a slide when we do the presentation to council. One thing I'll just throw out there, because one number I do know off the top of my head is that one homicide that occurred around the integrated care hub. That alone cost us $200,000 in the whole. So that's just to throw that out there. And I'm not saying that that's specifically a mental health cause, just to give you an idea of how much.
I think even just using an average
Yeah.
in terms of time and then just giving us a rough idea. See. Comment. Listen, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the consideration that's gone into this budget. I'm just going to say the obvious. This is a massive budget increase. This is more than double any police budget increase that I have seen in my 14 years on council. I think it puts the board and city council in a very difficult position because we are trying to weigh the importance of public safety against the cost of living pressures that everyone in our community is facing right now. I think it's fair to say that I am deeply concerned and very frustrated that this increase is basically to maintain the existing police services that we have in our. And I'm certainly not in favor of cutting those services because I think they're needed more now. Police services are needed more now than they've ever been needed before. What's clear to me, and Chief and Scarlett, we have chatted several times. What's clear to me is that my criticism is not of our staff here, because I think that there's actually been a tremendous amount of work to try to rein in costs as much as possible. But what your presentation has made clear is that there are a number of systemic, structural challenges and problems at the provincial level, legislative requirements that basically are leading to enormous cost escalations that we cannot control. And so there is something wrong. There is something wrong when I see massive police budget increases across the province. Something has got to change. And so I will support this, but under protest. And it's not a protest against anybody in this room, but it is a protest against the system that we are seeing at a provincial level. Something has got to change. And I can tell you that these increases are creating a groundswell and a backlash among other mayors and municipal leaders across the province. So I just want to make those comments. I do appreciate the work that's been done, but this has to lead to some real significant change. So I appreciate, thank you, Mr. Chair, for just allowing me to make that comment. I do have to run at this point, but thank you for the work that's been done.
Anyone else? No, you're good. Gail? You're good? Then I'd just like to thank you for the work that you put into this. It's immense. You did it in a way that was easy to follow and, budgetary 101 for dummies. And thank you for that. And off to the next step, I guess, right? And in that, I would, get my notes here. Then I would ask for a, motion that we, put forward that the Kingston Police Service Board receive and approve the proposed 2025 operating budget for the Kingston Police and the Kingston Police Services Board, resulting in a total net expenditure budget of $54,053,627, and that the board receive and approve the proposed 2025 capital budget for Kingston Police at a request of $2,785,000, and that the proposed 2025 operating and capital budgets as presented in report number 2443 be presented to City Hall. Very good. May I have a first and a seconder? Gail? Thank you. All in favor? Very good. Then I would ask that we move into the board member only meeting. And I have a first and seconder for that. Gail? Jimmy, all in favor? Thank you. We'll continue this downstairs.
Yep.
And can we say 10 minutes?
End of.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry, it's still recording. I'm just gonna do one.
I'm not sure where it is, where the end of it is.
Good day. See you soon.
Keep those pictures coming, Greg.
Are you pretty happy you got on? Oh,
We're still recording.
Downstairs, yeah.
Would it be on
Thanks.
the-
Yeah. We were talking about